Hello, my friends. So nice to see you on this lovely afternoon. Give me a moment to welcome in the Instagram folks. Just takes a minute here to get this all going. Okay. A few of you chiming in already with hellos. You must have been here early. Joanne, aloha from Hawaii. That's great, Joanne. So nice to see you here. Lynn, excuse me, in New Zealand. Debbie in Wisconsin. Sandy, Nita, Liz, Anne. Good. Well, we'll chat for a moment and say hello to each other while we give a few more people an opportunity to tune in on the various platforms. I'll go ahead and say I'm coming live to you each and every day in the month of April. Today is the 21st. So just bringing topics that relate to machine quilting. It's casual. It's often what I've got loaded on my long arm or something that I'm currently working on that has some sort of feature that I think would be interesting to you. And lots of you have been emailing in topic suggestions. So I'm trying to incorporate those as well as best as I can. So yesterday we had a camera issue. Oh my goodness. I did not realize the camera was frozen because what I'm seeing on the screen near to where my eyepiece is looks good. But what was going out on the feed, of course, was frozen. And many of you noticed that and commented. So my apologies. And here we go. Hang on a sec, Dave. Clearly I have camera issues again. I might have to get Mr. Producer in here. So it's not recording. Bear with me, you guys. We're going to try and figure this out. You're seeing me on my webcam right now, I would imagine. But I've got a side camera. And that's the one I want it to be recording on. Where's my camera field? Hang on a sec. Ha! Look at us go.
Hi, everybody.
Mr. Producer over my shoulder. There is always something to learn. And about the minute I start feeling semi-confident about my abilities, they get flattened again. So I was in the process of saying to you, yesterday was such an issue with the camera because I lost the feed and I didn't even realize it. And here's kind of why, and it's funny. I've really trained myself hard to look at the eye of the camera so that you feel like I'm talking to you as opposed to looking at the screen or looking at the feed or whatever. But now clearly I need to learn to actually look down at the comments every 10 seconds or so. So see, when you see my eyes moving, that's what I'm doing. I'm seeing the thumbs up. So I appreciate you guys' patience. You are the best. Seriously. Lots of people tuning in to say hello. Well, we've probably had enough time to get people on now with all that horsing around with the camera. Oh my goodness. It's a good thing Mr. Producer was upstairs watching. I'll pass on the highs to him, although he's probably seeing them in the comments too. Okay, today's topic. Again, I was saying too that I'm coming live each and every day in the month of April with topics related to machine quilting. And one that I wanted to talk about today is what direction should I load a quilt at the long arm? Vertically, horizontally, does it matter? The short answer is whatever is convenient for you. It's entirely up to you. Mechanically and quilting speaking, there's no advantage of one way over the other. All that matters then is the specific quilt you're working on and the various factors it has that it brings to the table. So let's talk about some of those, and I'll chat in about a few of them, and I'll keep looking down and seeing if you have comments or questions on the things that I am asking or I am talking about. When all other things, well, let's just say the most straightforward way is to have a single piece of backing or to have one seam that's joining two pieces of backing. And when I have that, then my first choice is to have that seam running horizontally at my long arm. Can you see I'm kind of standing in front of the long arm and it's not tracking me, so give me a half a second to make it follow me. There we go. It's most easy to have the seam running horizontally. The seam tends to have a little bit of tension on it, a little bit of tightness, so it can be a bit fiddly to work with it vertically. So I do love to load it horizontally, and that often also means I've got a lovely selvage edge to load on the front rail when I'm loading it up, which is the easiest possible way. So that's my first choice. But practically speaking, that often is not the only consideration. So let's talk about some of the other things that might come into play. One might be that you've got a backing that has multiple pieces in it or seams that run in both directions, and then which way do you choose, right? So you would choose something that's got a straight edge, or you would create one straight edge, and that's got to be your front. But from there, it's strictly a matter of how flat is that backing and what's the easiest way for you to load it up. And I'm not going to get into a ton of details on that, but I did put a link in the description for a live and unscripted episode I did a few weeks back, maybe 6 weeks ago, on a memory quilt. So if you don't see the link, you can also search for Memory Quilt, part 1. There was 2 parts. And in part 1, I showed the loading of a backing that had many, many, many pieces in it, and even different types of fabric because it was a memory quilt, so it had all kinds of stuff in it, and gave some great tips for getting that flat and smooth onto the long arm rails. So that's kind of what you're considering with the backing, is where those seam lines fall and literally which way seems easiest for you at the long arm. Judy's comment is front and center on my screen. I'll put it up for you. Technology is a blessing and a curse. Isn't that the truth? It is a serious source of frustration for me sometimes. And I will tuck in here, overnight we looked into the mic that I'm wearing, which has a little receiver that's attached to my computer, and we read up on that a little bit and really amped up the volume on it, hopefully. So I trust that sound is better today too. So we're learning. We're really learning. Debbie is saying, I'm going to be quilting 2 different king quilts. I only have a 10-foot frame, but it will work if I load it with the top of the quilt put on the side of the frame. That's a great point, Debbie, because that was kind of going to be my next thought, is if the seam lines are taken care of, you've done the thinking and deciding about those that you need to, then the next thing you just want to think about is what's most efficient at the long arm, or what way might your quilt fit. So it is more efficient to load a quilt where the length of it is running from side to side, because then the length at the long arm that I have to advance through is the shorter amount. And so there's fewer advances, fewer times that I have to roll it up and base the edges and put the magnets on the front, etc. So if nothing else matters, then I can do it that way, and it's most efficient in terms of getting that quilt done quickly. But in Debbie's case, if she's got a big quilt, and I don't know that I'm saying this correctly, Debbie, I don't know that I'm, because I just skimmed over your idea, but in the case of a quilt that is so long that it won't fit on your frame and you have to load it right side up, maybe you need to do that. Even though it has more passes, it's just too difficult to quilt something if it's filling out to the very outermost limit of your quilting frame. So that might be a reason to do it right side up. Scrolling back through questions again, I am being a good girl today and looking. Okay. Some other reasons for perhaps changing the orientation is thinking about what quilting design you're going to put on it. So the one that I've got on here today, for example, and all you're seeing so far is the backing, I'm quilting my crazy 8s on it. So it's kind of a wishbone-y number 8 kind of repeating design, which I quilt in rows. And I want those figure 8s to be in an upright orientation on the finished quilt. Therefore, I cannot load my quilt sideways, even though that would be a little more efficient, right? So I'm just thinking through which are the factors that really matter. And in this case, it matters to me that my finished quilting is right side up, and therefore I've got to load the quilt right side up. So here's another conundrum for you, another possible scenario. I do a quilting design that I call Baptist fans, courtesy of my friend Tracy. Many of you might be familiar with Baptist fans as a quilting design, and they're usually kind of in rows, and they're quite regularly spaced fans and nested one row on another. And I call mine differently because mine are a little less complicated, because I don't want to have to do backtracking over the previous fan stitching. So I've simplified it a little bit for quilting it freehand. But when I'm quilting those fans, imagine I do a row of fans and then I'm quilting down below that and putting in another row of fans. How does that work? Not very well. So I actually quilt that design literally upside down. I quilt my fans this way, and then I go down and I quilt the next row below. Make sense? So if my quilt has a top and a bottom, then I literally load the bottom of it at the top of my long arm rails, and I start quilting at the bottom, and I work my way to the top. And then when I'm done and I turn it right side up, all the fans are facing upward, the curving fans. So those are just some factors that come to mind when I think, which way should I load a quilt? Seam lines on the backing? How well it fits on the long arm frame? Can I actually load it sideways? That is more efficient, but doesn't always fit. Is my quilting directional, like the crazy 8s that I mentioned? Or maybe you quilt a name or a verse or a little message into some of your quilting, and maybe you don't want to be quilting that upside down or backwards. You know, what are you quilting on it, and does that matter? Those are just considerations. But mechanically speaking, it makes no difference. Your machine does not care which direction the quilt is loaded. And even, the warp and the weft of fabric is a little bit different stretch-wise. But I have encouraged you, and one of our earliest topics was how tight to make a quilt, how tight to stretch it and clamp it. I encourage you not to make it particularly tight. So that doesn't prove to be a difficulty, right? Your quilt has just got gentle tension on it, so it doesn't in fact matter which way I'm pulling. So from my point of view, mechanically speaking, it doesn't matter which way you load it. It's all these other factors that then help you make that decision. Let's keep buzzing down. Carol was loading a backing while watching and it's too wide, have to give it a trim. If you have any extra, that's definitely an easy way to do it. Patricia Minnick, I use a Q16 sit-down machine, but also always enjoy your info on long arms. I have several friends that use a long arm and I share your tips with them. And tell them watching Stitched by Susan is a must. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate that. And I know you're in my membership. I see your name in there frequently. So thanks for being a fan. Okay, I think we've covered that topic pretty thoroughly. I'm going to keep chatting for a minute or two with you about my upcoming masterclass release. And if you have any more questions or comments, be typing them in. There's a slight delay there. So I'll just stay and chat a minute while I wait for some more comments to come in. Later in April, I'm going to be re-releasing a brand new edition of my freehand quilting masterclass. Now this masterclass is, to be super clear, this is not foundational in the sense of it tells you how to load a long arm and how to choose thread and how to, I don't know, deal with tension. It's not really about those mechanical things. It is literally about freehand quilting, particularly my first love, which is edge-to-edge designs over an entire quilt top. So I demo and teach step-by-step all of those designs on high contrast thread and fabric so you can see them super clearly and see my movements around the quilt top. And in addition to this selection of designs of kind of different tastes and styles, I also have a heavy emphasis on teaching you how I come up with those designs and how they have evolved and grown and changed over time so that you can do the same thing with your ideas. Perhaps you've already got a quilting design that you'd like to do, and when you try and put it on a quilt, you keep getting stuck in a corner. What can you change about that? Or maybe it just doesn't look as graceful as you would like. What could you do differently about that? So there's a heavy emphasis on that, how these designs evolve and grow, and important factors that you can look for and measure and change and adjust. So that is coming up. Near the end of April. And so my sessions this month are kind of leading into that and are these auxiliary topics, let's say. They're things that aren't in the master class either, but topics that relate to it. And if you're not already a watcher of my live and unscripted episodes, they're aired on YouTube and Facebook. And I try to do them 2 Fridays a month. And there we joke that it's quilting's first reality show, but it's not really a joke because I do come on and quilt generally a whole project. So right from loading, talking through the decisions and thought processes and choices all the way to the end. And it's in real time and it's unedited. So you get to see how long things take. You get to see the decisions I'm making on the spot, and you get to see the problems that I have. And it's kind of funny. I try and choose projects that have something special to them. So it might be super bulky seam allowances or wavy borders, but often a problem. And so often those shows end up having real issues in them. And I almost feel like I should do some shows that are just straightforward quilting with no problems, because I do get lots of those quilts too. But you guys get the privilege, I guess, of seeing a lot of those problems as they happen live and in real time. So kind of fun. Anne is asking a question off topic if it's okay. Let me just throw this on the broadcast so you all can see it. I long arm charity quilts pieced by others, lots of long loose threads on the back side of the quilt. Should I cut them even if they don't show through the top? I don't, Anne. If it's a white top and they do show through, that's another consideration. But if they don't show, I just figure it's more textiles. It's not anything foreign being introduced to the quilter that I wouldn't want inside it. So I think it's totally fine to just be as quick as you can about it and get it done. That's my feeling about it. Anita, making the FQS cottage temperature quilt. I need ideas on how to quilt it. Lots of HSTs. You know, Anita, certainly you are welcome to peruse my designs, and certainly my workshop, which is coming up next Saturday, will have a lot of photographs, and I'll be talking a lot about things like how I do choose a design for a quilt, like what are the questions I ask myself that guide me toward particular designs, but also don't discount Pinterest and following some other quilters for a ton of inspiration. And thanks, I worried about tension issues relating to an earlier comment. Got it. I'm just scrolling back a little bit. You guys probably saw the gentleman asking, can you quilt me a new pair of pants, please? No, sure can't. Although they might be in style now, right? I think I've got all the questions. It doesn't look like more are coming in. Oh yeah, here's a couple more, just as I say that. Nita, on my long arm, I have to loosen the belt that rubs horizontal and vertical to free motion quilt at times. It's easier on my domestic Bernina. Interesting. So your machine has the option of having the belts on or off, and it's difficult to go back and forth? Because certainly, Nita, I don't know what brand you're driving, and I'm not familiar with all brands either, but I do know that when a computer is driving, it is being held by belts in some way. And when you want to quilt freehand, you have to release them in some way. You can't still have that connection in place, and it just will not move freely. You can't free motion that way. So see if you can figure out what your brand is and what that connection is. On mine, it's just a lever I flip. On my Gamel, it was a wing nut that I needed to loosen, you know, to free the connection to the belt. But whatever it is, you've got to release your machine from being driven by those belts in order to quilt free motion. SLA Fevers, just bought my first long arm and discovered you. Wonderful. I am so glad you're here in my little corner of the quilting world. Oh, Nita. Okay, hang on. Let me back up to your question again. No, I think my answer still fell into play. You were saying running, not rubbing the belts. And Kathy tuning in. Good. I think we've answered the question. So once again, a quick recap. Thumbs up if you're enjoying these daily lives. Email me if you have questions that you'd like me to include in the topics, susan@stitchedbysusan.com. Next Saturday, I'm hosting a free workshop, and it will be on YouTube only. And I call it 5 myths that tie freehand quilters in knots and how to break free of them. So it's a lot of stories from my experience and a few from students and a ton of photographs to illustrate my points. Just some of the things that held me back from free motion quilting, and some of the things I hear so much from people, their objections to why they think, oh, that's gorgeous, but I couldn't do that, because I don't think that's true. And I'm going to break those myths down one by one, talk about them, show you lots of examples of how you can bust through them. So that is being hosted next Saturday. Watch on social media my recent posts. There's a link there. You can just type the word myth, M-Y-T-H. Really, you can do it on any post. You don't even have to go back and find a specific one. If you type in that keyword, M-Y-T-H, in the comments, you'll get a little registration form. And when I sent out the invitation via email, I had a typo in the date. If that was you and you caught it, I am so sorry, but it is Saturday, April 27, a week from yesterday, for sure. So that is a free workshop, and it's going to have lots of information on the one thing that I mentioned today, the one myth, like how do I choose what to quilt on a quilt? There's going to be lots of topics or lots of discussion about that. It's a topic that's dear to my heart. Yeah, I'm going to save my talking about it till then. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, any more thoughts? Denise is saying to Anne, I'll throw this up on the broadcast. You could use it as a teaching moment to educate charity piecers of the need and benefits of trimming threads from tops. I mean, that's a great idea, Denise, but the practical truth is you usually have no idea who pieced that quilt top, and it is sometimes months and years in the past, and nobody knows who pieced that quilt top. So I don't know if that'll work, but try if you can. Nita, my machine is a Qnique, and sadly, I'm not very familiar with that brand, Nita. So go to your manufacturer, go to your manual. It should be pretty straightforward how to go from computerized to free motion, but I'm pretty sure there will be something that you've got to do to release those belts. Colleen, can we access at another time? I'll be traveling. There will be a replay of the workshop, Colleen, yes, but you still need to register in order for me to send the replay link. And there's a workbook that I'll be issuing to give you the link for that. So go ahead and register, and then that replay will be up for about a week's time afterwards. Cindy, just getting my new Q24 set up and going. So excited. It's because of you and your lessons that prompted me to buy a new long arm. Her name is Pickles. I love that name. I love the fact that you name her entirely. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, any others? Okay, so someone is typing myth here. So not here on YouTube, all right? I'll go right after the broadcast and I'll put a link in the description. But if you type that on social media, specifically on Facebook or on Instagram, type the word myth and you'll get a little automated response that will help you register. Okay. We're getting a lot of other comments in here and other non-quilters. So I think it's time to call it a day. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be back with you tomorrow and we'll chat more quilting topics then. Have a great evening.